Good morning, everyone. Here we are, Wednesday, March 24th, for this beautiful day here in sunny California. And we're all here in Southern California. This is exciting. Yeah, Orange County to boot. So we're at Know the Rules of the Game. I'm Desiree Patner, your host, and today's theme is going to be about the impact of COVID-19 on homelessness. So thank you for joining me. Today we have Kelly Ahmed. Did I say it right? Or close?
Close.
Okay. She is a former UPS inside sales for the national sales of UPS, and also she is on our esteemed NDLC, our Diversity and Inclusion Leadership Council. And then also we have Aghasi did I say that? We're having fun with names this morning. It took us 10 minutes and we started laughing so hard, get it together. So we're famous for butchering names over here. So we'll let it go. That's my human trick of the trade for today. But anyway, so welcome. And what you've been doing, Bertil, has been just short of a miracle. Running the Wise Place and taking care of women from 18 to 84 that are single unaccompanied women, raising capital, keeping the core of what they do, their mental state of minds, the ability to keep their health together, and being properly fed and clothed, and everything that you're doing is just the heart of my soul. So thank you and welcome. And Kelly, you want to go ahead and introduce Bertil for us?
Sure. Very excited, Desiree, to be here today. Thanks for having me. I certainly had a great career with UPS. I was there for over 28 years as vice president of sales. And during that time, I got introduced to Wise Place. And I've worked with Wise Place for, probably over 10 years now. And I've just been amazed at the transformation and how Wise Place has continued to grow and continue to do such good work through the years. I met Bertil back. We had a change of executive director, probably about 3-4 years ago now, Bertil. Time flies. And I've been excited and just amazed at how she's taken Wise Place to the next level. And I think it's just been wonderful to watch the impact that it's had throughout Orange County and certainly in the Santa Ana area. But then COVID came, and I think that also created some real challenges. So I want to, first of all, just say hello to Bertil and let her have a chance to kind of give a little bit of her story. And then we can move into talk about what's been going on at Wise Place these past couple of years. So Bertil, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Desiree. Wise Place really is where it's at because of the community, and you two are huge champions of our mission and helping vulnerable women. So I'm really excited to be with you this morning. As Kelly said, my name is Bertil Aghasi. I have been serving in the nonprofit industry for 15 plus years. I took over as the CEO of Wise Place about 3 years ago, and Wise Place really caught my heart because I was taking a tour, and I had known of Wise Place for about 15 years, just being in the nonprofit industry. But when I took a tour, I walked into the emergency shelter, and I will never forget that I saw so many women who had to have been 80 and even 90 years old, so much beautiful salt and pepper hair in the shelter, so many walkers and so many wheelchairs. And here they were in our emergency shelter. And my heart dropped, to be honest with you. I was so, it really touched my heart that they were safe and not on the streets, but thinking of an 80, 90-year-old woman who's disabled and on the streets, that's what made me decide to take the job at Wise Place, because I knew that our organization could help lead the effort to end homelessness for vulnerable women, especially, all types of women, but especially senior women. I know that the audience agrees with me that we don't want an 80 or 90-year-old woman homeless and on the streets and by herself. We know that our community, especially here in Orange County, can do so much better. And so it really is my honor and my privilege to lead the organization and help us grow and help us evolve and meet the ever-changing needs of homelessness. My first year was all about stabilizing the organization, and then you think that that's a challenging year, and then here comes COVID. So, it's been challenging, but our volunteers have been the brightest light, and we have not given up. Last year, even through COVID, we helped 76% of the women transition into permanent housing, even through COVID. And so we're really proud of that. So I can't wait to kind of get into it, but I'm here and I'm just so honored to be the CEO of Wise Place. And, you know, we have dreams of taking Wise Place to the next level. We have done shelter, all types of shelter and wraparound services for over 90 years in the community. And we are the only organization that solely focuses on unaccompanied women. And unaccompanied women is just our way of saying like a single woman who doesn't have a partner or children with her. And so she literally is alone. And when women are alone on the streets, the statistics are heartbreaking, because when a single woman is alone on the streets, it's unfortunately not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when she will be assaulted. So it's so important that our organization leads the effort to end homelessness for unaccompanied women so that they are not vulnerable and on the streets.
And so, Bertil, just to expand on that a little bit, I once heard the statistic is 1 in 4 homeless is an unaccompanied woman. Is that still accurate, or?
So unfortunately, with homelessness growing across the nation and here in Orange County, especially senior women, as you know, populations of are aging. Sorry, I should turn my cell phone off. There's more women and more senior women becoming homelessness, because homelessness really, there's so many myths about what is homelessness. It's about mental health, it's about substance abuse. Really, there's 3 reasons for homelessness in Orange County, and that's pulled from data in Orange County. And it's really about costs. It's really an economic issue. It truly is. The first and second reason is that you cannot find a job that allows you to pay your rent or mortgage, right? It's kind of the 1-2 combination. It's economics. The economy definitely doesn't work for women, especially, and women of color especially. And then the third reason for homelessness in Orange County is what the study calls a family dysfunction, which really for women, a huge part of that is domestic violence. So that could be a death of a partner, and all of a sudden you're, you know, a 2-income household and your spouse dies, especially when you're a senior, and now you're a 1-income household and you can't afford the same rent or mortgage. But for women, it is especially being a survivor of domestic violence here in Orange County. And almost 60% of the women we serve at Wise Place are survivors of domestic violence. So Kelly, unfortunately, that number is now 1 in 3.
Wow.
So it's 1 in 3 here in Orange County and across the nation, which again is why Wise Place solely focuses on unaccompanied women, because unaccompanied women tend to fall through the cracks. You know, thank goodness here in Orange County, we have so many amazing nonprofits that focus on women and families. And we're so grateful for that. And women and children obviously need the support. But we don't want unaccompanied women to be left alone, especially senior women.
That's a great.
Yeah, that's a great, unbelievable. My heart just pounds when you talk about the data analytics. And I think that our audience and viewers that need to know also that the aging population, as you say, that it's growing. That's because in 2018, 65 and older has now more populous in the United States than 5 and younger. So having women, and also women outlive men by 5 years. So your single unaccompanied women, or your unaccompanied women, thank you for the correction, is going to be even greater, because as we age out, as we, you know, and what's the effect of COVID going to have, you know, with the aging population and how that went through. So huge. So I'd like to take it back a little bit to, let's talk about, you talked about a little about how you got into it and got your heart. Tell us a fun fact about you that is like that Kelly doesn't know, since you've known her for a long time. I'd like to everyone feel that, you know, the Mother Teresa in you. What is that is so fun about you that no one would know, that you're just going to go, yeah, this is what I do and this is who I am?
Oh gosh. So you warned me about 10 minutes ago.
That's right.
But
it's because you have no sleep for 72 hours and you finally decided to, okay, I I gotta get presentable. Okay, we gotta do this. Go ahead.
Running a women's homeless shelter during a pandemic, there's not too much fun going on. But I just got a dog, so that's a fun fact. I've never had a pet before. I just got a dog for the first time, and I can hear him barking and crying downstairs.
Right now?
Today, yes.
Doesn't that break your heart? You're like going, you're in a house, you're fed, you're warm, and you're crying because you can't hear. I have the same problem. My door is shut. My 3 little girls, they know as soon as I pause, scratch. Can I come in, Mom? Can I come in?
I need you, Mom. It's 7, 8 in the morning. I need you. So that's as fun as we're getting in this household right now. We have a cute little, an Irish cream golden retriever. He is about 12 weeks old, and he is the cutest terror you've ever met in your life.
But it calms you down. It puts the aura in life. And when you're having a really, I know the last 3 days and my heart bleeds for you, it's been really tough at the facility and all the things that are going on, but it just rejuvenate life? You just feel like, oh, thank you. And it just being there. So sorry for just, I had to get that in there because
I'm like, I'm not that fun, Desiree, right now.
Now you are. Look at the dress you have on. See, we both got the flowers going here, right? We got
There you go.
Purple. It's still March. It's still Women's History Month. Just sporting some purple.
That's right. I love it. Actually, International Women's Day this year was yellow, was a bright yellow. I've got my St. Patty's, green that we had all for pass the torch and everything going on. So if we were to take it back, and now, Kelly, you were going to say something?
Well, I was just going to mention, I think Wise Place is one of the few shelters too to really handle COVID in a fantastic. I don't think you guys we even had a breakout, did we? Did we, Bertia?
We did not. And I mean, we were very aggressive. Our kind of reaction to COVID was very early, very aggressive. And I think that really saved us. Shout out to the programs team. I mean, they worked their booties off. I truly don't think I slept for more than 4 hours, along with the programs team from March to June.
Yeah.
So we put in the sweat equity to make sure that our vulnerable women, we didn't have a single outbreak. And we're one of the only shelters to not have a single outbreak. Unfortunately, a lot of the shelters had multiple outbreaks last year. It's a really tough environment not to have an outbreak with something so easily contagious as COVID, when you're in kind of a communal environment, communal showers, communal bathroom. So thank you. Huge shout out to the programs team. None of us slept for like 6 months.
I bet.
Look at the room that I remember when you were showing me the one end room where they ate, and they had the tables in there, but the beds that were in there that have the big room. I mean, you have how many people in there? 40, 50 people?
60 just in that room alone. So normally, pre-COVID, we were serving over 100 women every single day. And so imagine 100 women with 10 showers and 10 bathrooms. And normally that's not an issue, but with COVID, huge issue, right?
Right.
And we also support women with domestic animals. We really, at Wise Place, we think that's so important. And to be honest with you, that's something that I didn't completely understand. I was a little naive to. And I remember my first day at Wise Place, I was touring and I was meeting some of the ladies, and I got to meet Diana. And she has the cutest little, well, he's not little, he's huge, golden retriever named Jay. And I was talking to her, and she was telling me how her and Jay had been paired for several years, for about 5 or 6 years, when she was homeless due to like a health issue. And then the bill skyrocketed, and here Diana was finding herself homeless. But Jay helped her not be assaulted. He was like not only just her family and her dog, but he was physically her protector until she got to the Wise Place shelter. So we had, I think right before COVID, we had about 14 animals, mostly dogs, I think 1 or 2 cats. So here we were serving over 100 women every day. And we operate in like 14 puppies and kitties. And because we are open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, we never shut down at Wise Place. That takes about 50 people to operate a 24-hour-a-day shelter, right? When you're open. So, we were an organization that had, almost 200 people there before COVID. So there was a lot of, everyone's favorite word is pivot for 2020. There was a whole lot of pivoting going on at Wise Place.
I bet.
Buying dog food. You're not just getting people food, you're getting dog food to make sure that the dogs are taken care of.
Absolutely.
So I know, Bertil, too, one thing that makes Wise Place so different are the programs. And you've mentioned the program managers a few times. What do the programs and program managers actually do to help support the women as, you try to get them transitioned?
Honestly, the number one thing we do when someone is referred to our shelter, either from a hospital or the streets or another partner organization, is to build trust. Usually the first 48 to 72 hours of a woman entering our shelter is just, here's a clean place to shower, here's some clean clothes, here's some warm, nutritious food, here's some water. And then it's like the first time that a woman is not afraid. So we will see a woman sleep just for 24, 48 hours because it's literally the first time that she's not afraid, that she's not living in her car, that she's not living on the streets. And then after their basic needs are met, really the case managers and the clinical staff, they're building trust. Because, what some of us may not realize, and I certainly didn't before I got to Wise Place, is that there's so much trauma that goes along. And so our job really is to help walk alongside a woman's journey and help them deal with the trauma that has happened to them while they were surviving domestic violence and had the strength to leave their abusive partner, or even the trauma that happens when you're trying to survive on the streets as a woman. So we unpack that while at Wise Place. And as we unpack that and we deal with the trauma that the women are dealing with, we really just kind of wrap them around services. And so, every week at Wise Place, we have art classes, yoga, meditation, breathing, in addition to resume building, job coaching, budgeting, savings. A big part of what we do is when we're ready, we set goals. So every woman sets her own goals and we help empower our participants to meet their own goals. And then those who finding and keeping a job is an attainable goal, we help them. And that's been really tricky during COVID. A lot of our women were essential workers.
Yeah.
So we would see women who have a full-time job, have a part-time job, really hardworking women who get up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. and would shower and hit that bus and take, a 30, 45-minute bus ride to get to their job. A lot of our women work in elderly care or like office jobs. And so managing kind of their employment and their risks of COVID and then bringing that potentially back to the shelter, that's a reality, right? That all essential workers face, that was really tricky too. And so it just took a lot of partnership, with the women. But, all of our services are around achieving personal self-reliance. And that looks different for, say, a woman who, like Anne Marie, who was homeless for several years and came to our shelter, and she was in her 80s. I believe she was 82 when she came to our shelter. And so with Anne Marie, let's say it's maybe not necessarily about finding a full-time job, but it's about stabilizing her health care, right? And being proactive about her health care and supporting women with their mental health. So stabilizing and wellness is such a part of our program too, in addition to some of the traditional services like helping somebody increase savings and income. But in either path, the end goal is always to end homelessness and to help align the women with either assisted senior living facilities for the ladies that need a little bit more support or rooms to rent. I remember two women who had been in the shelter over a decade ago, And this was 2 years ago before COVID, and they came to a holiday party. And I didn't know who they were because I'm still fairly new. And I was talking to them, and they were roommates.
Oh,
They met at the shelter over a decade ago, and here they were, and they were roommates, 11 years later, and they were the best of friends. And with the economics, they can't afford to have their own apartment because it's so expensive. And so they've been roommates for like 11 years. And so you see really beautiful friendships that I think truly only happen at Wise Place. I've been in this industry for 15, 16 years, but there is something really special about being in a female only environment that really only happens at Wise Place. And you see women really support each other. That's really beautiful.
oh, absolutely. I mean, the programs are so multifaceted to help women in any stage of their life. I'm always amazed. I've always been amazed with the program management there. I think it's what makes Wise Place unique, is that it's more than just a shelter. It actually supports the women as they go through the transitions and things like that. I'm always amazed by that.
Yeah, they're really one-on-one personalized services. And that's the secret sauce, right? To really be able to build a relationship one-on-one with somebody and to really get to know them. And so part of, what I did when I got there 3 years ago is we actually dropped caseloads on purpose because we needed to have that more one-on-one time because you're dealing with a lot of life, right?
Right.
So if
Right.
you're just, we're not treating people as a number, right? We're putting people first in everything we do. And so you're right. I am so thankful to the program staff. We changed a whole lot and they have just been on this journey. And, every day we're doing that right now. Actually, we're having a series of meetings with the program staff that says, what can we do better? We're really looking at our outcomes and saying, this is really great, but what can we do even better? And we're not afraid to ask ourselves that. And I think that's why we continue to improve.
Sorry, so put people first is your rule number one, which is exactly what you just said. So I want to make sure that everyone knows that, even though we didn't define it, and everything you've gone over really embodies, as Kelly said, not only where they are in their journey of transitioning back into stabilization, getting a job, based on what their initial come and go, but you have given the hope and dreams of getting back into wherever their end game is, to give them the tools and resources and support from their quality of life at first and foremost. And by addressing their quality of life and how to, as you say, stabilize it, then health is number one. Once you get that going and you get the mindset, the body set, then you can then themselves can manifest the ability to think that it's attainable by having that source to go with it. And I love the way you say that you give them 48 hours or longer to just sleep and just to be a place to just reset the body. Because if the mind's not firing on all cylinders in today's COVID environment, I don't care how wealthy you are, I don't care how successful you are, I don't care all the things you have and all the greatness you have behind you. We all have that moment. And we have to have the tribe to reset. So listening to you speak, talk about a book or a way that you could transition and teach everyone to be better within themselves, that dealing with had you ability to go. And that's why we call us know the rules of the game, because you're saying, I didn't know until I got here that I had to unwrap and then repackage, repurpose, and retrain not only our programs, but also the people. And so rule number one, people first.
Absolutely.
Which I think really leads into, the second point, Bertil, that you brought up, where the importance of volunteers, right?
Yeah, so because we put people first, it was expensive to do that, right? I think putting people first, especially during COVID, was not easy. I'll never forget, I was, to be honest with you, one of my program managers were talking and I wasn't listening to a word she was saying. And I had to tell her, I'm sorry, we need a break. And I just ran in my office, shut the door, and just kept reading the CDC guidelines. And it was talking about women over 60, which over half of the women that we serve are over 60. And it was talking about women with compromised health. Again, over half of the women we were serving were disabled and had compromised health. Things like COPD and just things that they would be very affected if they, had COVID-19. And so, putting people first was very expensive. And I remember just putting my thoughts together and looking at our budget and saying, okay, we need to increase sanitation. We need to increase case management. People are going to be working overtime. And the biggest thing is we needed to move people out of our one shelter that had, over 170 people between staff and shelter participants. And we need to move every woman who has compromised health and is over 60 and privately fund motels so that they have their own access to a bathroom and a shower so that they're not sharing with, 150 other women, right?
Right.
And so that was incredibly expensive. And I put my budget together and I sat there and I stared at the numbers that were staring right back at me. And the expenses were 4 times higher than our normal expenses. But
Wow.
Reading the CDC guidelines, again, put people first, right? Wise Place is going to put people first. I knew it was the right thing to do. I knew it was be costly. I knew we did not have the money at the time, but I knew that we would figure it out, right? I knew we had to, separate the women into motels, scatter our services, our case management and our clinical services, delivering meals 3 times a day all over the community because we had the women in separate motels for safety alongside our on-site shelter. And I remember calling my board chair and say, this is what I'm doing. Do I have your blessing? And these expenses are going to go up and these expenses are going to go down and it's going to be painful. And it was just a simple, yes, you have a great plan, go for it. And I said, great, you won't hear from me for about 7 days. I don't think we're going to sleep for 7 days because here we were, basically we dropped our occupancy at the shelter by 50%. So essentially what I did is I left about 75 women on site and then moved 75 women off site who were over 60 and had compromised health, right? So that's very expensive to do.
Right.
The way we got through that is that the volunteers were the brightest light at Wise Place. We ran our first fundraiser at the end of April last year, and over 430 donors helped us donate almost $200,000 in 24 hours.
Whoa.
And I mean, if you asked me a year before COVID or any of our board members, if that was even possible at Wise Place, we probably would have laughed at you. Because I don't even think we had 400 donors, right? And Kelly,
no,
because she has great history. And I mean, and there's technology in virtual fundraising, right? So we didn't even know if the majority of our donors would know how to donate online because they like to write checks, right? So it's all these nuances that you don't even think about. But we did, our donors really stepped up to the plate. They knew that we were on the front lines. They knew that we were keeping the most vulnerable women in our community safe. And they knew that we weren't doing that alone and that we needed their help. Because imagine, when we purchase a meal, for instance, purchasing a meal for 150 women 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner is served at Wise Place. Having that warm meal brought to Wise Place is a fairly easy thing to do. And when you're trying to serve 150 women, but we have to go to this motel and this motel and this motel and this motel, who even drives it there? So we created all new volunteer opportunities. We had volunteers do contactless pickup, not even come into the shelter, have their mask and their PPP that we supplied for them. They would come, pick up the food, and each person had their own little meal delivery route. And that's how we got by. And then also we said help because meals became very expensive, as you can imagine, but obviously nutrition helps you keep your health. And so we had, almost $200,000 worth of meals sponsored by just people, not a big company, just an individual person saying, hey, I can get 4 or 5 friends together and we're going to make spaghetti. And then we figured out how to kind of get it all over Orange County, if you will. And so, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I cried. So one day I was looking at the meal calendar and I just looked like, Tuesday night was sponsored. Wednesday night was sponsored by a community member. Saturday, every meal on the weekend, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks was sponsored. Friday evening meals were sponsored. And mind you, before COVID, these were things that we were paying for.
Yeah.
But through the grace of the community and just the goodness of people to say, hey, this is a tough time for me too, but I want to help, right? And
Yep.
so I'm gonna help by paying $500 to sponsor that day's meal, or I'm gonna cook safely spaghetti and do a contactless drop off.
It's amazing. That's just amazing. Yeah.
And I think what I realized in that moment is, as the community was so thirsty to help, they just didn't know how.
Yeah.
Because everybody is affected by COVID. Every single person, like Desiree said, regardless of economic status, everyone's affected by COVID. And I think everyone felt isolated, right? And so this was a way to kind of tap into the community and felt like, even though I'm sheltering in place and even though I'm isolated, or even though maybe even I lost my job or my hours have been cut, as a person, I could still contribute to my community. I still have value in that way. What I did made a huge difference. And that's how we survived. And we not only survived, but we thrived thanks to volunteers.
That's fantastic. That's
It's-
just a fantastic story.
Well, the idea is that, you know, before we got on the call, I told you about what happened last night about, here's a gentleman who has 8,000 doors. They're called properties of apartments or rentals or multifamilies around the United States. And they donate 240 properties every year to the women homeless, to make sure that not only they get off the streets, but they realize that not 100% of their vacancy, they cannot have their properties 100% occupied. So to do that, they also get the tax benefit of donating the properties, but it's just morally the right thing. And they're like, well, it's, you know, it's just 240 because it's nationally spread. I said, no, you don't understand. Here you are helping 150 women. If you imagine if we were to multiply that and take you as your model of what you've done and how you did it, and you said that, you know, you were worried about from going from check writing to going to how to digitally pay, how do we connect? And then a lot of the people were just normal individuals around the local community saying, I'll make food for you. Mm-hmm. Every little helps. And we've heard it so many years and so many decades that there's a different vibe now. It's got to be a little helps in just giving food, you know, how to take care of the logistics of just driving, the logistics of the bandwidth of saying, how do I provide the PPE to dress a person because they're carrying the food back in the day where we couldn't touch anything, let alone breathe on anything because we didn't know. I mean, now we know so much more about the virus than we did before. And the ability to share that information. That's why the whole thing about when we have to give kudos to Kelly to even think about, you know, the rules of the game of how to help the homeless, because it was not even on my, you know, yes, we bring that information out. But one thing we learned is that when we write a report or we put down the word report, we bring the analytics together, it's a flattened report. It's not a live interaction. It's not real time. It's not something that we can engage and say, what are we doing for the future to help the now to make sure versus then, okay, what's the past? Because what you did a year ago, that model helps, but let's say we're evolving. How is that going to change? Because you're constantly evolving. It's like you say, you're having your weekly meetings. How can we do better? And better might not be the end game. Better might be just logistically how to make sure we're sustainable, not only as an organization, but also the women, and how we can help address more women or help others help more women, or no matter what's going on. So that's so powerful. And so we go into number 3, which is your third role, focused on housing, you know, and Kelly and I, and last night we're talking, this really is about housing. You know, where do we put this know the rules game? Yes, you put it in the know the rules game category, but this truly falls into home ownership, owning your own property, being in your own rental, going into home ownership. And I've heard so many people say, well, we don't get into that space. We're just truly about home ownership. You're not about home ownership if you're not looking at the ability to get people from starting on, I mean, look how many people you could cite that started living on the streets, that now are 7 figures. You have to give the opportunity to grow and move. So it is about homeownership. So thank you for the rule.
Huge, that's a huge point, and I want to expound a little bit on what you're saying there, Desiree, because we've been talking about the impact of COVID, which certainly huge impact across everyone, but homelessness impacts everyone, and I don't think people realize that if they're not touched by it directly, it's still impacting their city, their economy, the whole structure of our society. And I just think to myself, this thought that, well, it's never going to happen to me or anyone in my family or this or that, it's naive, and it's also not true, because it impacts you in some way, shape, or form, even if you just want to go with taxes and social welfare. So Bertil, that I know that's your third point, is housing. Is like Desiree said, you want to talk a little bit about housing and where we're at with that?
Sure. Yeah. And thank you. I think you both make incredible points. And I think, one of the unfortunate things that COVID did do is that it highlighted how vulnerable we all are. There's so many people who maybe got their hours cut or maybe got laid off, who thought that, that won't ever happen to me. Right. And I think, unfortunately, that is what COVID did, is that it reminded all of us that it's all of us, unfortunately, could be homeless. And again, if you go back to the real truth on why people are homeless, it's really an economics issue. It's a lack of affordable housing, a lack of, wages, right? So wages go down, housing goes up. It's a math problem. It's not, somebody doesn't earn homelessness, right? It's not that someone did something wrong, therefore they're homeless. It's truly, it stems from economics. Yeah, and so that's why my third point is, really it should be all about housing, because if you think about how much money we as taxpayers, as organizations, as communities, wrap into kind of the COVID response. Well, think about if we didn't have, say, a shelter. Like, shelter is needed, but it shouldn't be our sole focus. And I even say that as the leader of Wise Place. I don't even want Wise Place's sole focus to be shelter, right? Part of why I took the opportunity to be CEO of Wise Place is because we have bold goals to build Orange County's first and only permanent supportive housing for unaccompanied women. And we hope to break ground in about 2 years. Construction is a nightmare. We'll keep you posted. But, the need to advocate for housing, and whether that be permanent supportive housing, affordable housing, just housing. Our community in Orange County and all across the nation needs housing. And so if I didn't have to have a shelter with 100+ women in communal settings, and I think that we were so fortunate, right? Because we were very, very aggressive early on, but other shelters had multiple outbreaks all year last year because their shelters were communal settings. Now think if they had individual rooms and shelter was much more temporary and we had housing.
Yeah.
Right? So to me, that's why my third point is, I myself, this was a reminder for me that none of this would have been an issue if there was adequate housing. None of it would have been an issue. And so in addition to our Orange County community putting so many funds towards shelter, as individuals, we can all make some good noise in our own cities, right? In the cities that we work and live in, and to really advocate and show our support for housing. Because, city councils listen to that. They want to hear from you. And that's another way that you could plug into your community and help advocate and end homelessness in your city. Because a lot of the times, those that show up to maybe a council meeting are those that are opposed, let's say, to building housing, because maybe they haven't had the opportunity to really understand organizations like Wise Place and how we are truly outcomes driven and we truly do end homelessness. And so if you also show up to those meetings and say that you are in favor of housing being built, you move the needle.
Great point. I just think again, it's been an amazing year, and Wise Place has accomplished so much. Is there anything, I guess, that Wise Place still needs for Teal, or things that you think people can do to help Wise Place?
Yes, absolutely. So, we are wiseplace.org. You could find my email there. I'd love to talk to you. But we have a fundraiser coming up. It's called Help Them Home on April 28th. It's a one-day fundraiser where we hope to raise over $145,000 in one day. You can build your own page and you can share it. If you go on wiseplace.org, you can see it. We have started something to help with isolation, kind of like letter writing campaigns that, and even youth or college students can plug into. It's as simple as you kind of write a letter back and forth a few times to our shelter participants. And I can't tell you how incredibly moved they are that you as a community member would take a few minutes of your time to just say hi and tell them that you're thinking about them. It helps them feel seen, which oftentimes people experiencing homelessness feel invisible. And just by writing a letter, you help them feel seen. And oftentimes I see women carrying that letter with them. So I can't even begin to express to you how meaningful that is for them. Things like sponsoring meals, helping drive meals to our separate locations, or sharing your expertise, maybe budgeting, major empowerment, art for healing, all types of volunteer opportunities. So wiseplace.org.
Great.
To hear from you.
I love the pen pal thing. I mean, I'm just thinking in my mind, when I was young, that was a very big deal. We had the ability to deal with the mental hospital in Camarillo that have a pen pal. You look at prisons, you look at anything that has to do with isolation, senior citizens. I don't hear about that often anymore, about senior citizens in centers, senior living. It's isolation forgot. And
Right.
you're saying, now I'm bringing you back in, as you say, it's emergency shelter, but it's temporary. I think there's 2 points that I'd love to have you hit on before we wrap out. One is that the April 28th, as far as the pen pal and things like that, I'm definitely going to share that through NW's platform and know the rules. But also, if we can get some media coverage for you from a TV network, obviously we're doing this right now, but we're going to amplify and get it through. But having the fact that I think the pen pal just hit just like, oh my gosh, something as simple, back to like Tammy Bennell, she writes hand letters to all her, every month she does 10,000, get it out there, get it said, and does a video clip every single day. But that pen pal part, that is that communication is huge, because like you said, just to have someone that they could put into the frame of mind of having like a significant other that they're sharing their thoughts with, is that huge. Even if they've never met them, you hear about those cases. And the second thing, I think that, I get so many times, federal contracting, support for, writing for grants, no one's going to care. I'm not into that space. Why would I care that I want to get designated as an underserved, whether I'm women owned or small business or all the different classifications? I want everyone to know that you were selected for the very first pilot program, and the federal government came to you, and that was a serious chunk of money. If you could take a minute, talk about that, because we need to let everyone know that you do good work, it gets noticed. And the more you talk about it, bring it out and let people know about it, the more success breeds success. So could you give a minute about that?
Sure. So you're referring to our emergency shelter, right?
Yeah, about you got I believe it was $1 million or something like that from the federal government for the pilot program, like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, so when the Riverbed and the Civic Center encampments were being broken up, there was a lawsuit here in Orange County that, I'm sure we've all heard about. And the federal judge in that case, Judge Carter, came over to Wise Place and personally picked our organization because he really knew, and it's really a testament to his insight as well, is he really knew that, women on the streets are vulnerable. And Orange County needed a non-co-ed shelter, and that is our specialty, right? We specialize in the hope and housing of unaccompanied women, and so we were handpicked, and so that became a local, Orange County contract. It was temporary because it was a temporary shelter for us. And we ran that shelter for 3 years now. But yeah, it was an honor to be chosen, and just to highlight that there truly should be more non-co-ed shelters. We really are passionate about that. There is something special about unaccompanied women. They have unique unmet needs. There's actually a bill in California that's trying to be passed right now, and Wise Place was the first official supporter for. And you could sign up on our newsletters. We're gonna kind of make a little bit more public information about that soon. But it's a bill that its goal is to focus on unaccompanied women as a special and unique subset, just like we would veterans or transitional age youth.
Oh, that's awesome, Bertil. I didn't even know that. That's great. That's
See?
great.
Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to talk about it because I've had some family emergencies going on, so I'm going to play catch up next week. But yeah, we're going to hope to kind of shout that from the rooftops. It's a bill in Sacramento right now, and it would make California the first state to formally recognize unaccompanied women. And so that is a huge step in the right direction to, formally recognize the unique and special needs that women do have.
Wow.
Do you have a bill number with that?
Yes, and I will send it to you.
Today. She's exhausted. The fact that she even got it, come on, go over it. This has been fantastic. So as a quick recap, because I want to keep everyone, thank you for your such valuable time, and I know you're exceptionally busy, and just being here, I so heartily appreciate and the work you're doing. So recap, number 1, put people first. Number 2, volunteers to the rescue. I mean, as you were talking last night, thinking about what are these rules and what they imbibe? I mean, these you would think are the most simple rules, but the most powerful rules, and the rules that are the most time consuming, logistically, cost consuming, and you have to really embrace putting people first, because our DNA defines we are not all the same, and our needs can be 100% uniquely different. The volunteers to the rescue, volunteers will continually need to be employed and utilized, and maybe not today, but having them on that Rolodex, having them in that pocket to always know that you're always needed. And then number 3, focus on housing, how we house, the logistics now of where we eat, where we go, where we sleep, where we work. That space has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger because of that, and how you use your filtration systems, and how, just my mind was just going with the communal thought, how you breathe in separate air when you don't even have dividers, we have rooms and the air vents and things like that, and outside, inside. So focus on housing. So everyone who's in the real estate ecosystem, homelessness is part of the ecosystem, and everything we can do. And Lucy Dunn was like, she says, it's not even our charter, but it affects our businesses, which affects, our sustainability of our small businesses in Orange County and our growth of scaling the businesses. So if we don't address the homelessness, then we get affected, and it happens what gets in that pocket. So as you're right, so we want to keep amplifying that homelessness is all of our responsibility to get it transitioned to, because you don't never know whether you're going to be there or someone you love is there and you don't even know about it. Yep. You're the rescue. I love the fact you say it. It's an emergency shelter, but it's just temporary. This is not a place to stay. It's a transition to become your effective, your own 4 walls.
Right.
So, and so a parting tip. What's our tip of the day?
Oh gosh, tip of the day.
I can give one.
Kelly, come to my rescue.
Let me say a couple things. First of all, Bertil, thank you for the work you're doing, because you know what, you're making a huge difference. And thanks to all those volunteers at Wise Place. I'm so proud to be associated still with Wise Place. And again, I've always been proud of the organization, but you're making a huge difference. And so, tip of the day for you: get some rest.
Got it. I like that tip.
We need to have captain of the ship and mentally, physically in tune. But I would like to amplify. So Kelly actually invited me to go to Wise Place when we first met, saying you've never been. And it just so happened, as a 25-year seasoned veteran ticket holder of the Anaheim Ducks, that they were sponsored one of the biggest players back in the day when you first got hired. And when I walked in, I'm like, don't I know you? Like, you know, it was one of these things. So what a small world. And to that extent, so wiseplace.org.
Yes.
Connect. And then can we connect with you on LinkedIn too? Is that a great place? Okay.
Yes, so Bertil Aghasi, and you can find my email on kind of the staff directory at wiseplace.org. So whatever is easier.
That would be fantastic. So thank you very much, Kelly. Thank you very much, Bertil. In honor of Women's History Month, we have 3 incredible ladies here, and this is what this conversation is about. So anyone who has information that can amplify what Bertil is doing, what Kelly's doing, how we can integrate better to create a better housing ecosystem, please reach out to me. I'm Desiree Patino, and thank you for another incredible edition of Know the Rules of the Game. Everyone be safe and stay healthy, and have a great one. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.